Okay.
The wolf!
Caught you!
Will be the last thing you see.
It's an ambush! Watch it! Go, go!
Okay.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So I just found out the funniest thing I've ever heard. The funniest, dumbest thing I've ever heard. Did you know there's a thing called a cultural Muslim? Can we talk about cultural Muslims for a little bit? Right, so with the recent sort of resurgence of Christianity, you've got even some atheists like Dawkins calling themselves cultural Christians, right? So basically they admit Christian values are like superior, and even though they don't believe in God, they are willing to go along with Christian values, basically Christian Western free society. They admit that that is good. So it turns out that some atheists have adopted like a counterpoint to that position, and they call themselves the cultural Muslims. So they're atheist, but they hold Muslim values rather than Christian Western free democracy ones. Yep, that's as ridiculous as it sounds. By default, the large majority of Muslims would simply treat them as either an apostate because they're atheist, even though they're claiming to be culturally Muslim. So I'm pretty sure that's either like a death sentence or like jizya, like depending. So like they're either treated as an atheist, which they are, even though they have cultural Muslim values, or just directly an apostate because they don't believe in Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. But, like, let's get past that just ridiculous, like, starting position. It gets significantly worse when you dive into, like, the values and the principles of Islam. But you take away, like, the sanctity of Allah and the sanctity of the prophet for Allah, Muhammad. You have no sort of divine moral hierarchy if you're like an atheist cultural Muslim. So if you take away the sanctity of that, it gets even funnier. So just for an example, they theoretically must hold the prophet as the ideal conduct of a man, but simultaneously they can't acknowledge him as a prophet or Allah as the god because they're atheist.
Okay.
But like it gets even like stupider again once you have a look at like the actual principles and behaviors, the unethical behaviors of just Muslims in general, but stemming from the prophet as the ideal conduct of a man. Like sex slavery, murder, child marriage, persecution of minorities and Jews and that sort of thing. But like take child marriage for example. The prophet molested a 6-year-old, Aisha, and then later raped her when she was 9. Continued doing so up until the time of his death when she was 18. Yeah, like the justification for all of that behavior is like either an appeal to heaven fallacy, i.e. God told me I can. For example, with Aisha, the prophet was being shown Aisha in a dream, and he took that as a green light, basically. Or like an appeal to power, like they have the power to do it, so they can do it. Like both of those are like fallacies, but at least it has some sort of defense, you know, because it's like divinely sanctioned, let's say. But all right. Let's suppose for a moment a cultural Muslim enters the arena.
Okay.
They have all the same values. Pedophilia is justified, sex slavery is justified, multiple wives is justified, no women's rights, persecution of gays, beheadings, throw them off buildings, collapse walls on them, burn them, women, Jews and Christians all, you know, persecuted. The purity spiral mechanism of death to apostates, which ironically includes like atheist cultural Muslims, but like we'll get past that. All of it, yeah. They now believe all of those principles and behaviors are correct, stemming from Muhammad's as the ideal conduct of a man, and all those values, like, are correct, but absent the promise of paradise and absent Allah and the Prophet's divine authority and will. Like, that position, ladies and gentlemen, is basically raw-dogging pedophilia as an acceptable position. Like, that's pretty fucked. Like, not to mention the sex slavery and all that other stuff as well. Like, cultural Muslims are like, are you serious? It gets like worse again though, like, because so in the Islamic stance, Muslims are like consider themselves superior to all other cultures and religions and everything. They dominate them in like two-tiered societies. Like, they just do not tolerate gays and atheists, and basically subject Christians and Jews and all the rest of them to jizya, which is like an enforced tax. It's like a two-tiered society of Islamic supremacy. But they do this in order to put pressure on people to convert, and theoretically they're trying to convert people to save them, to get them to paradise. But like alright, so cultural Muslims aren't even doing that though. They don't believe in the paradise, remember? They're atheist. So it's like a Like, it's still like a shitty sort of system. It's a shit belief based on an appeal to heaven fallacy, like justifying an appeal to power fallacy. Like, to, you know, you have to believe that Islam is true and that you are saving people by converting them. And then that in turn justifies the abuse of power, which is just an appeal to power fallacy of forcing someone to convert, with threat of violence and murder if they don't. Like that's bullshit. But at least it has the, you know, constructed theory of, what would you say, saving people behind it, because you're saving them from eternal damnation theoretically by converting them. Yeah, cultural Muslims don't even have that. They don't believe in paradise. They don't believe in heaven. They don't believe in saving people at all. They just seem to atheistically adopt the positions of Muslims, which, if you take away the divine sanctity of and divine authority of, like, Allah, it's just kind of fucking shit. Like, what do you guys think? Like, what do you think about cultural Muslims? It was like the silliest sort of position I've ever heard. Like, it kind of lines up with, like, progressivism a little, though. If you take the appeal to heaven fallacy out of Islam and, you know, just use a raw appeal to power fallacy, it kind of aligns with progressive values a little bit. Like, you can do it just because you can do it sort of thing. There is no truth, there is no good, there is no evil. There is only, subjective truth, which is essentially a lie. There's no objective truth. Like, that would be the progressive position, right? Since there's that, there is nothing but power, and everything is permitted.
Negative contact.
Goddamn.
And, like, where I heard this was, I was watching, like, you know, one of the hate porn debates with, like, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. And, like, Cenk has been, like, pretty bad about shit for a long time, right? Like, he was, at least at one point, an Armenian genocide denier, like, in favour of the Turkish Ottoman Islamic Empire. Like, that's bad. And, like, if you guys remember, Turkey was, you know, one of the worst places for child marriage. At one point, it was like a third of all marriages were child marriages in Turkey. But, yeah, old Cenk Uygur, he claims to be an atheist, but he also claimed to be a cultural Muslim. And, like, to me, that was just, like, an absurd position. I don't know if he's still claiming to be a cultural Muslim. I know at one point he was. But that position is absolutely absurd. Like, that is, like, the worst position you can take. Like, yeah. Even the worst of the pro-pedo libertarian radical leftists, at least their position is more consistent than a cultural Muslim. Like, it's insane. But, like, that's progressivism for you. If you're allowed to just lie and, like, play word games and you don't have to be consistent internally or otherwise with anything about any of your beliefs, I mean, you just kind of wind up in these positions, don't you? Like, like cultural Muslim. Yeah, it's just nuts. Oh, like, the fact that he was an Armenian genocide denier too, that's just horrible. That's worse than, like, Nazi Holocaust denial, in my opinion. Because, like, Armenian genocide, that was basically a Muslim supremacist genocide, right? It was going door to door, converting, or essentially evicting, marching, raping, beating people until they died. That's what it was. It was just Islamic supremacy in action. justifying itself against other religious beliefs. Yeah, and it just continued. Like, it got the Armenians, it got the Assyrians, and it got the Greeks as well. And afterwards there are a bunch of pogroms against the Kurds as well. Like, it was just horrible. Absolutely horrible. But yeah, like, denying that is, like, in service to Islam is, you're just an evil piece of shit, in my opinion. Like, that's just rotten to the core. Whereas, like, for example, Holocaust denial is more about, like, a ton of them don't actually deny that 6 million Jews were killed. What they deny is the method on how they were killed. Like, one of them, he was saying that only like 40,000 of them were actually gassed. The rest of them were like starved to death and worked to death in work camps. I don't know why that position is as unacceptable, like, as it is. You know what I mean? Like, they portray that as like the most evil thing in the world, saying, no, the method of death was actually work camp rather than gas chamber. Because I think the reason why they find that so unacceptable is so I think that's so unacceptable because it's trying to act as apologia for communists, right? Because both the Nazis and the Soviets had labor camps, starved people to death in labor camps, and mass executed people. But only the Nazis, the allegedly right-wing, even though they are authoritarian leftist, they seized control with mandatory subscription to labor unions. That's as leftist as it gets, but I digress. Only the Nazis, the allegedly right-wing, had gas chambers. The Soviets didn't have gas chambers, they just had gulags, labor camps, or mass execution with a shot to the back of the neck, which, you know, both of them did. The Nazis did that, and the communist Soviets did that. But the pure horror of the systematic killing with gas chamber, that looks especially evil, because you're not even gaining productive labor out of them as you're killing them, right? You are literally just killing them as, you know, animals, worse than animals, pests. You're literally gassing them with a gas designed to kill pests, kill insects. It's horrible, right? I'm pretty sure that's just apologia for the communists, because, yeah, only the Nazis did that, and that looks especially bad. But a ton of the Holocaust denial people say they only gassed like 40,000, the rest of them were all execution in forests or labor camps. But I don't see why that's such a unacceptable position to take, besides the fact that you're offering apologia for communists. Like, I'm not well read enough on it to make it to take a stance either way. I only saw like one video of Holocaust denialism where he directly refuted evidence of gas chambers in one camp. Yeah. Like, I'm not well read enough on all the camps to know the precise numbers. But, in theory, in my opinion, that's probably where a lot of it stems from. But, let's get back to the point. I reckon Holocaust deniers are way more ethical than Armenian genocide deniers. I think Armenian genocide deniers are the scum of the earth. They're the fucking worst people. Absolute worst people. Like, Islam in general has like a very, very wide, long history of its militaries attacking civilians. Like, it doesn't really matter what war you go to. Every time, like, they seize, like, even like the Turkish government, the Ottoman Empire that committed the Armenian, Greek, and Assyrian genocides, that wasn't a standalone thing for Islam. It still isn't to this day. Like, the Kashmir War, they like mass terrorist attacks in India, mass executions of civilians in Bangladesh, terrorist attacks in the West, terrorist attacks in Russia, even recently, from like the Soviet Afghanistan war and all that. They have no compunction about attacking civilians. Like, Islam's pretty horrible. Like, even October 7, like, that attack was against civilians. Like, it was allegedly against, like, military targets, but a ton of... They killed a ton of people and just took a ton more hostage. Like, I doubt it. And, like, what... They're taking hostages. Like, that alone is targeting of civilians in a war zone. That alone is a war crime. Like, why does it get a pass for this? Especially from, like, leftists who, like, in theory are moral and in theory care about civilians and individual rights. Like, I guess they hate colonizers so much that they justify the behavior and the historical standards set by Islam. Like, every war, like even the terrorist, even September 11, they were directly targeting civilians. Like, they have a history of doing this. Like, it doesn't even have to be full Islamic theocracies. It can just be areas with majorities, right? Like, where was it? Nigeria recently. Like, there's another one where they're just directly killing civilians, directly killing, you know, Christians. Alleged, like, so, I'm pretty sure they did that for, what do you call it, demographic control of the area. They're trying to control Nigeria, basically. Same in the Congo. They're just direct targeting of Christians. And, like, fucking Western media is quiet as a mouse on that. Like, that's fucking atrocious. Like, the Western media is just dog shit. It really is. It's like rabid leftist. And it's siding with Islam. Like, it's just... I don't know, like, it's literally trying to self-destruct the West. But, like... Okay... Like... Okay, it's trying to self-destruct the West. It still wouldn't be a failure of capitalism or the West if they succeeded, because it is clearly Marxist leftist subversion, which stems from communist shit countries like China, and it stems from communist shit countries like the Soviet Union back in the day. All of it is subversion. It's not stemming from the values of the West. The values of the West have left an opening for them to attempt to exploit it. But people are seeing through it. Even though our stupid, weak, or like piece of shit politicians have allowed them, like, all this Marxist shit to completely infiltrate and subvert universities, even then the West can see through it.
Pretty nice
Like,
lyrics, all things considered.
yeah, it's just nuts. But yeah, what do you guys think about progressive cultural Muslims that are atheist? I think they're hilarious. I love them.
Done.
Will be the last thing you see.
It's an ambush! Watch it! Go, go!
Shit.